Good evening, good evening, good evening from everywhere that you're watching from. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. This is Relationship Talk with Nike, and today we are going to be having a very interesting conversation as usual. So I'm expecting Temple to join the conversation. But before it comes in, let me just quickly say why we are doing this topic today. Today we are talking about knowledge dispensers, the common challenges with knowledge dispensers. And like I said, usually on this channel, we talk about relationships with other people. We talk about your romantic relationships. We talk about relationships that you have with your spouses, whether you are married, your partners, your spouses, whether you are married or not. But today we want to talk about relationship with ourselves. My relationship with myself. How do I do better with myself? How do I have a healthy relationship with myself? Because that is the beginning of every other relationship that you can ever have. The relationship that you have with yourself. And especially for people that are knowledge dispensers, people that are carers, people that are there for other people. How do you manage yourself? And what are the common challenges that we would usually have? Hello.
Hi.
So I've been giving a brief introduction to our conversation this evening.
Okay.
I was telling people before you joined in that usually on the program we talk about relationships, and we talk about relationships with other people. We talk about relationship with our romantic partners. We talk about relationship with, every kind of relationship actually. But today we want to talk about relationships with ourselves.
Yes.
And how you can better manage yourself, especially as a caregiver, especially as a knowledge dispenser, especially as people that we have large shoulders for other people to rest on. So that is why we're having this conversation today. How do you do it in such a way that you have a good relationship with yourself? So now that my guest is here, because technology has been misbehaving, let me just quickly read out his profile. For today we have Mr. Temple Obike in the house. He is a certified marriage counselor. He's a psychotherapist. He's a coach and an author. Over the years, he has cultivated a range of skills from emotional intelligence and psychotherapy to addiction recovery, counseling, intervention, trauma resolution, neuro-linguistic programming, and keynote speaking, among others. He's a founder of Temple's Counsel and Mind Academy, their relationship and family counselors, employee assistance program providers, psychotherapy and additional recovery out center. And he has this, and he's been in practice for over 13 years now, and they focus on human behavior and providing solutions that work via cognitive behavioral therapy, integrate therapy, and psychoanalysis. You are welcome. And maybe for me to add to that, he's also my own personal therapist. Because yes, he's my own personal therapist.
You have to add that, Eddie.
So when I'm in trouble, it's the person that I run to, because most therapists need therapists as well. You are very welcome. I appreciate you. I appreciate the intervention that you had for me and my family, when we needed you that time. Thank you very much for having that big show that we all cried on. So we are having this conversation today, and like our flyer has rightly said, we are talking about knowledge dispensers and the common challenges that they would usually face. So if I would ask, maybe we should just ask from that very personal angle. Maybe we should start from that. What are the typical challenges or problems that you yourself generally help people with? What are the challenges that you help people with?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for the introduction, Nike. And as always, it's not something I take for granted. Whenever you have me come on your show, I'd like to say welcome to everyone else, and please, my apologies for turning up a bit late, technology issues. So,
No
just
problem.
to answer your question, the problems I usually face with people generally now in
Mm.
practice are usually problems that have to deal with infidelity, problems that have to deal with behavioral concerns, maybe people that have maybe some form of trauma, or problems that have to deal with, let's say, communication issues, as it concerns couples in a marriage
Yeah.
or in a relationship. So generally speaking, these are usually the bulk of it, what we face on the regular.
Yeah. Okay, so it means that you'll be listening to a lot of people talk, rant, talk. Sometimes if we want to rant, we call you, we talk to you, we rant and rant and rant, and you are just there to listen. So, and I know that we are talking to so many people that are in that category, whether they're in the religious space, whether they are practicing something. A lot of people that watch this program, a lot of people that are affiliated to us, they are
Mhm.
sort of knowledge dispensers. They are those people that people also run to for
Yeah.
help and assistance from time to time. So, and I thought that in rounding of the year like this, so let's talk to ourselves. We've been talking to other people. Let's talk to ourselves and be able to find some solace. So, I would also want to ask, what are the initial challenges that you had on your own personal growth path? Like, as you were growing in this career, what were the initial challenges? And I'm talking about growth now. For you, it's a passion and it's also a career. So, what are
Mhm.
the initial challenges that you faced?
Okay, thank you, Nika. So, as a much younger therapist, the first challenge I faced, personally, was that I got to a point in my life where I noticed that something, I had a passion for, had gotten to a point where it had the propensity to start giving me money. So the first thing I needed to go
Yeah,
beyond was would I call it the initial guilt, that
yeah,
setting, where I found out that I needed to start collecting money for something I
yeah,
felt was supposed to be altruistic. So
yeah,
that was the first hurdle I needed to jump, where I had to monetize the gift. Because, of course, it took me on learning and relearning a lot of things where I knew that, you can move from a point of, first it's a talent or it's a gift. Then you move it from the
yeah,
gift stage to the stage where it becomes a talent, where everybody knows that, oh, if you need an intervention, call this person. But then you have to educate yourself so that it becomes a skill. So it got me to the point where I needed to appreciate the fact that, the fact you have started educating yourself, if not for anything else, it will start attracting a different level of value. And one of the things that comes
yeah,
with that level of value is monetization or tokenization, as we would call it.
yeah.
So that was one of my initial challenges. Then the other challenge was where all of a sudden I felt the need to psychoanalyze everyone that was around me, you know, where I would see
Yeah,
people, all of a sudden my mind is working and running numbers on me. And, it didn't take me long to discover that if you go down that path, you'll definitely lose friends and lose relationships.
yeah.
So it required a bit of balance and all. So yes, I'm guessing those were the two major hurdles I needed to scale at the onset.
I can relate totally with the issue of the monetization process. I think for me as well, and maybe now I would want to just give kudos to my pastor, uh, Pastor Sam Oyem.
Mm,
It got to a point where, I became really confused. I
yeah.
was learning a lot, I was studying a lot, I was going for trainings a lot,
Mhm.
and I just felt that, and well, today's conversation, because usually I don't like discussing religion or spirituality, but there's no how we'll talk about today's, um, you know, episode without talking about religion, because I got to a point where I was really confused
Yeah.
that, um, I was investing a lot of time from morning to evening. This is what I'm doing. And I didn't know how to just monetize it. And I felt a lot of guilt, maybe asking people for, okay, how do I, So for me, when I went to speak with him, it was like, you know what? When you went for trainings, was it free? I said no. The travel tickets that when you traveled, was it free? I said no. Accommodation when you traveled, was it free? I said no. So he said, so somehow our passion is supposed to lead us to profit. And so you have to look for a way around it. Because that week, while I was speaking with that week, I know I was giving counsel to a few women, and one of the women said, this is so good that I don't want to live here without giving you something, because I really want this to work for me. And she squeezed her hand in her pocket and she gave me something, but I was feeling, no, I'm doing it for, I'm just doing it for the cleanness of my heart, but I got to that point where I knew that, yes, maybe we need to move from passion to profit, but it has to do with a lot of conscience as well. So that was definitely a hurdle for me as well. And I understand the cycle, and analyzing people as well. It's just really normal for you to look at this thing. Okay, this is what I read in the textbook, and this is what is playing out right here. And I think that you need to handle this and this and this in your life. If not, you are going to be in trouble. But for me, another thing that I think was I think I had problems staying in my true calling. Like I said, I'm a typical church girl, and there was that thing where mentors will ask you, what do you want to do? And you say, this is my space. And they'll be like, it's not wide enough. You're not going to be able to, when people begin to business analyze what you're doing, and you know that, no, but you pray about it and you'll just stay there. That is where I want you to stay. So for me, people thought that what I was doing was too narrow. You could widen things up, you could do, but I'm glad that at the end of the day, we still have somebody that we speak to in prayers that will just tell you, okay, just stay here. And for me, that was another major thing. So thank you for being vulnerable with us. So I want to ask, so what are the challenges? Because today it's about helping ourselves, all the people that are helping other people. So what are the common challenges that you have seen with leaders, with caregivers, with knowledge dispensers generally, that you have seen over the years? What are the typical problems that you think this group of people will usually fall into?
Okay. Thank you, Nike. So, just in keeping with your introduction, I believe that everybody here is, that this is us having a very chilled out conversation. Because I'm even not going to, I don't even want to get technical. I just want us to, be as vulnerable and as real as we can be. Here it goes. For me, when it comes to dealing with knowledge dispensers, as we call them, and of course, I think the first thing we might need to do today is to properly categorize knowledge dispensers. Because when we say knowledge dispensers, a lot of people automatically assume that the knowledge dispenser is someone who is out there, up there, and other people have to look up to them to, teach or educate. Now, while that is true, it will surprise you to also know that the parent at home, the mother, the father, is also a knowledge dispenser, because they have people looking up to them who want to learn from them. So all I'm trying to say is that what we are doing here today, as niche as it might be, is something that, on the, subliminally has a lot of reach. The spread is something we can't even fathom, because it's important. Now, going straight to your question, when we talk about knowledge dispensers and the issues they have, the first thing I would notice was that there was this, it's what we call vicarious exhaustion, or vicarious
You said
trauma.
what?
Vicarious trauma. It's vicarious in nature, because this is almost like second-hand trauma. Something that happens to people who give out knowledge, especially from a therapeutic standpoint or counseling standpoint, where you speak to people And as long as you hear what they're saying and you do not give yourself an outlet to put this out, or give yourself an outlet to balance yourself out, even while you onboard what they're saying to you, one of the things you start to notice is that after a while, when you're done speaking with them and they leave you, a part of you still struggles with the things you have heard or the things they have unburdened on you.
Yeah.
So it's almost like people come speak to you, and when they are done, what they leave with you haunts you if you're not careful and you do not learn ways to unburden yourself. The other thing I can say that I've noticed with knowledge dispensers is that, you see, after a while, we lose ourselves in our willingness to help other people. And without you knowing it, you suddenly start to play the role of a demigod, where you feel that for the fact that someone made it through your doors into your practice, it means that the responsibility of fixing them lies on you. And sadly enough, a lot of knowledge dispensers, teachers, caregivers, therapists, you name it, counselors, find themselves trapped in this vacuum, because they are at that point where they see somebody that obviously needs help, but everything about them is telling them that this person requires their, how do you put it, that this person requires their, that this person needs them to help them, and whatever happens, they must be helped. Now, this is where it's interesting. Not everybody that comes to you will be helped by you.
Yeah.
Because the
ability to accept that.
Exactly. And it's a difficult thing, especially at the beginning of your practice, to accept that you can't help everybody. The ones who you end up helping are the ones who are either very willing to be helped, or the ones who are also willing to put in their own quota of work in the process. Now, the other thing I would say that I also have noticed with this is what we call empathy exhaustion. Empathy exhaustion is where you get to a point where you know you have it in you to feel empathy towards the plight of the people that come to you, but for some strange reason, something has happened to you due to the fact that you constantly are embroiled, day in, day out, with having to listen, with having to engage with people and whatever concerns they may have. After a while, you notice that the more information you get around people and their struggles, the more you become exhausted, the more you start to feel exhausted. And you find out that there are certain levels of empathy you should bring to certain conversations. And without you knowing it, it's almost like you become I wouldn't want to say emotionless, but there are certain things that will trigger people regularly that obviously when you hear it, because your mind is running numbers on you, running permutations, you start to struggle with them. In the process of trying to calculate, in the process of trying to decipher, you find out that your reactions are delayed. So you become exhausted, with regards to your empathy. So the other thing I would say I've noticed is, how do I put this?
Someone said you become a class monitor. In the comments.
Yeah, I see, Ruth. Yeah, you're right, Ruth. Because after a while, all you just do is you just monitor. Everything around you becomes quite mechanical if you're not careful. Another thing, and this is very important for us all, you need to be sure that while you are attempting to help people, that you don't get to a point where you start to isolate yourself and become lonely. Because this job can isolate you. One day you wake up, I've done this for 13 years. I started it off at the point where there was really little or no information out there on the internet. a lot of what we learned, it was what we were taught in school, then we had to go back to school again, just like you said, you know, Nike. And the thing is, when you now come out, you find out it's a different ball game, what you got in there, as opposed to real life expectations a client has of their therapist. There are a lot of things you need to learn on the job. And one of the things you learn, sadly enough, is that when it comes to being a knowledge dispenser, when you know certain things and you hold yourself accountable to certain levels of knowledge, wealth of wisdom, coping strategies and all, there are a lot of things you find out that you naturally start to abhor. These are things that you find out that naturally you start to distance yourself from these things. And sadly enough, these are the things you find out that permeates the entire environment around you. So one of the things you must understand is that as a knowledge dispenser, always strive to ensure that you're still part of the tribe. Because it has the propensity to isolate you and make you lonely. And at that point, that by itself becomes a form of pride by itself. Because now what you're doing is you're at a point where you feel slightly better than other people who may not know better. Forgetting that at some point, that could have been you. That was prior to the relearning process, unlearning process you had to go through. At some point, that could have been you as well. What else can I say? For me, I think that's the bulk of it, really.
Okay. Let me just quickly give a brief recap of what you said before I probably try to say what I think at this end. You talked about people feeling like demigods. And feeling like, because people are coming to me, I definitely must be superior to them. And that is why everybody is trooping here. And the funny thing really is that most of the time when you are speaking, one of the things that have been very instructive for me is that when you are speaking in the room, never think that you are the most intelligent person in the room or you are the most knowledgeable person. It's just that you were given the opportunity to speak. Somebody in the room can be looking at you and the person is scoring you that, oh, okay, maybe you could have gone deeper there, but you don't know. And so it is something that everyone needs to be aware of, that, you don't become a demigod, like you rightly said. The second thing you talked about is the responsibility of fixing people. You think that you have the responsibility to fix people because they have come to you, which is really a very big temptation. In fact, for me, like I said, it's going to be difficult for me to talk about this without necessarily oscillating between spirituality and all of that, because for me too, it was a really big problem, because I majorly deal with relationships. And every time I'm dealing with a relationship that I could not resolve the problem, it became my issue. It became my problem. I used to see it as, I failed, I couldn't help them, I wish I could, and all of that. And until I went to speak with, superiors, and they were like, it is not your responsibility to fix people. Like you rightly said, some people are not even willing to put in the work. So there's really nothing you can do. And I saw that the real thing that was happening is that this failure, quote and unquote, were stinging my, own pride, my own ego. And I had to get to the place where I'm okay with dropping the ego. If you come,
you associate
no
yourself
100% guarantee. There's no 100% guarantee that you are going away okay. There are so many things, there are so many factors. I am willing to give you my all, but if you are willing to put in your all, you get a result. Depending on your own willingness as well. So that's one, I just 200% agree with you. Then you spoke about, I'm putting it my own way. You spoke about the humility to accept that, you can't help everybody. It takes a lot of humility to accept that I will fail sometimes, Then you talked about empathy exhaustion, where you begin to have delayed reaction, you are emotionally detached from reality, forgetting that you could be that person as well. Then you talked about isolation. one should be careful of isolating oneself to the
True.
point that, you know, so these were the things that you talked about. So I also think that like you said, there are some people too that they suffer. For me, I call it compassion fatigue, where you just continue to spread yourself and spread yourself and spread yourself, and you spread yourself too thin, that you, if you yourself, you are now beginning to suffer burnout, and you are not, you have gotten to a place where you can't really, you don't have anything to give anymore, because you have overdone it.
Yes.
There are times that we take away the responsibility that people should be, the accountability that they should have, the responsibility that they should take on. A lot of people take those things away from other people and put it on themselves, and you know, so you just allow yourself to be a dumping ground for everybody's problems and issues, and you believe that you are being nice, and yet you are just disempowering people. So that is another thing that I would just want to add from my end. I don't know if any other thing is coming to your mind right now before I move on.
Another thing, thank you so much, Nike, because these are very important points you raised. You know, you couldn't have even said it any better. While you were talking, the other thing that came to my mind was the fact that for knowledge dispensers, and this is very important, a lot of them get to a point where they become so embroiled and enmeshed in the problems their clients present them with, that without knowing it, they start to erode professional boundaries.
Yeah.
And you see, this is something that has become quite prevalent, because the moment you start to erode professional boundaries and you get to a point where you overexert yourself, you allow the problem a client brings to you, get you to a point where it's keeping you up at night, you're worried about it, you're taking it home, it's affecting everything else outside of your professional hours. At that point, that's the point you need to go to a senior colleague or a mentor in the field and speak to them, or someone who also guides you and speak to them, because at that point, without you knowing it, you're going into dangerous terrain. And you see, like I would always tell people, you should never attempt to decipher someone else's darkness unless you know where your light is. Because this job we do as therapists, we need to be very careful. This job we do as teachers, we need to be very careful. As counselors, as caregivers, as clinical social workers, we must be very careful, because there's an element of this job that is not just physical. I believe that I'm talking to people who are equally professionals here, and I'm free to go in this direction. Because I also heard you, Nike, talk about, you know, the fact that we cannot separate the spiritual from this at some point. I'll give you guys a very personal story. You know, I could remember, I think 2 years into my practice, where I started seeing people. I had just started seeing couples. You know, I was excited, young therapist, starting to make an impact. And, you know, on this particular trip, I left Lagos and I was in Abuja for a session. And the moment I finished from Abuja and I got home, the very same problem I had handled in Abuja looked like it was just waiting for me at home. And I was like, initially, I was like, okay, maybe coincidence. But by the time it happened,
said it's a strange spirit.
Yeah. By the time it happened more than once, I already knew that this was not coincidence. I already knew this was not happenstance. You know, and from that point, I firmed up on knowing where my light was as a therapist. You must know where your light is, because if not, you will fall into somebody else's darkness. You don't do this job as long as Nike has done this job. just because you're good at it or you're passionate about it. And I'm just saying this, if there are young therapists amongst us here, just know where your light is. That's the only thing I'm trying to say. Because if you don't know where your light is, a lot of things will go wrong. You will erode professional boundaries. Some things will keep you up at night. To you, you think you're worried, but in actual fact, it's beyond you being worried.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that perspective, sincerely. I really like that perspective. And I also think if we are to be honest here, there are also, especially when you are dealing with vulnerable people, the way you are dispensing your knowledge to them can become attractive to somebody. And I don't know how many times I've heard, because it looks like it just attracts a kind of sexual attraction from the opposite sex. They see you talking about what you know, and they believe that, oh, how I wish I married you.
Yeah, it's like a mental
that kind of
for
thing.
them. I get you.
And if we are to be honest, it is something that one has to be very careful of.
True.
Because this is a terrain where you just get a lot of sexual attraction. True. And people are just like, oh, if you know this, and they believe that what you know might not necessarily be working for you.
True.
Because everybody will have to pay their own price.
True.
The kind of marriage that I would eventually have will be dependent on the kind of work I'm willing to invest in it. But because I know these things, I studied them and I'm dishing them out, you just believe that this person is an angel, and you get some people speaking to you in how I wish, and one has, I don't know if that has happened to you, these people that are just trying to get too close.
Well, truth be told, like I said, 13 years is a long time in one field. And honestly, there is, with that number of years, there is almost nothing you wouldn't have experienced. So yes, the thing is, knowledge is measured in light. Yeah. Wisdom is measured in light. Understanding is measured in light. And sadly enough, when you're with people, that's why when you see, even in the Bible, it tells you that the entrance of God's word brings what? Illumination, light. And you see, when you're with people who rely on you to dish things out, something begins to happen. The fact you're in that environment suddenly creates a temporary ease. There's a name for it in psychology, where you leave your therapist feeling very good with yourself, like you can conquer the world, which is what you hear people say all the time on social media. Oh, that motivational speakers have done it again. You leave them feeling like you can jump over 10 fences. There's something it does to you actually, where you leave someone who impacts on you. But you see, at that moment, if you cannot make yourself the part of that impactation process, something happens to you as well. The moment you step outside of that door, outside of that office, you get to a point where everything starts to crumble back. Everything starts to fall back on you. Now, I'm connecting this to the question you asked. Because it is measured in light, when you're with someone and you're talking, and for everything you say, it's almost like it pushes out light. And all you're doing is clearing out the things that have bothered them. Bringing solutions, shedding light on things, deep crevices that have left them confused over. At that point, there's a relief they feel. And you're not doing this because you're trying to impress. You're simply doing your job. There's a relief they feel. And that's why, as young therapists, it's important. Be careful when you see, as a man, a female who comes to you for therapy, marriage counseling, and they are coming alone. Because what level of counseling, short of the fact the person is coming for something like maybe abuse, and their partner is not willing to be part of the process. And you're trying to get them to a point where they become mentally strong to make their own decisions. Short of that fact, When somebody is coming to you, or a man is coming to you, a female therapist, for marriage therapy, and you've not seen their wife, you've asked after her, and she's not willing to come. So what exactly can you, per se, do with just one person? Especially, and you see, this thing called attraction, when you see somebody who's attracted, you know, unless we want to lie to ourselves. There are certain matrices you measure this thing by. So as a therapist, you must be sure that, first of all, the venue you use for your therapy, your office, must be professional, accessible, as private as it ought to be. Make sure it is professional. It is not one of those places where doors are locked or anything. Make sure it has access. Make sure the people on the other end know they shouldn't come in, because this is a professional setting. They should be that trained, but let them also know that the door is open so that people can comport themselves. So yes, Nika, it's something I have experienced over and over again, but it gets easier with time to handle it.
Yes. So so now I want to ask, how has this practicing, how has it been of help? Because I don't just want us to talk about challenges alone. How has it grown you as a person personally, and how has helping others, how has it matured you, how has it grown you, what has it positively done to you?
Okay. Well, thank you, Nika. Honestly, a lot. It's helped me a lot. I could remember getting to a point where I looked back, from where I was coming from in the early days to where I am today. And I can not help but be thankful to God, because aside from the fact that, yes, I had read, I felt a bit entitled to some of the things I had achieved, but I cannot say that was all me, because I believe grace played a huge role in it. In terms of how it has helped me, I've become someone who's become a bit more assertive. I could remember a time when I found it difficult saying no. Saying no was a big problem, especially in the school days. But the more I practiced this, the more I came to understand boundaries, the more I came to understand the concept of self-care, self-awareness. It dawned on me that I'd gotten to a point where I had learned to set my boundaries firmly. I know when my no is my no. And to even go a step further, when I say the no, I will reward myself for saying no. I have reward systems in place. Secondly, it instills discipline. There's a measure of discipline that when I measure where I used to be, let's say 10, 15 years ago, and I look at myself today, that measure of discipline that has been instilled in me is something I cannot deny its existence, because I've seen it grow in leaps and bounds. And because I know that there are people who look up to me, my children, my family, my wife, they look up to me. They are my first line of accountability, because with them, it is beyond what I say. There are days they see me have certain lectures. There are days I invite them to come and sit in and learn as well. And I hold myself accountable to the fact that I don't want a situation where any of the children grow up and tomorrow they tell me, but daddy, we sat down, we heard you tell people things like this, but how come it's not directly translating into your own life? We cannot see it. We can't see the evidence of it. So that accountability, that discipline has been instilled. Then in terms of my ability to read, assimilate, read widely, it has also helped me in that regard, because certain boundaries, certain confines I would place on myself, many years ago, all of a sudden I've gotten to a point where I know that as long as I am willing and as long as I believe my passions are intact, what I want to do is intact, what I want to learn drives me, There is nothing I can't learn. There is nothing I can't unlearn. So that by itself has also helped me. And lastly, when it comes to the number of people, on this practice, I've spoken to about 2,600 people. And this is excluding people I speak to in events. These are like people I speak to on a one-on-one basis. 2,600 people. They may not all have been had their problems solved, but at least I can lend credence to the fact that at least 60 to 70% of those people were okay. And these are people I know that regardless of where they are, I have left a part of me, at least I left value with them. So it's given me a value-driven approach to life, lastly.
Yeah. So really, sincerely, I can't agree less, or is it more, with everything that you have said. You just discover that on this journey, you are becoming a better person yourself. Because really, the one of the things that you discover is that it is easier to give what you are practicing. When you want to speak to people and what you are telling them is just textbook knowledge, there is a way that you will not be authentic. There's a way that it will not be coming naturally. It becomes too mechanical. But if this is a journey that you are on as well, for me, I've discovered that, or maybe I don't know if that's how it works for everybody, but for me, I know that on my own personal journey, on my own growth path, on my own personal development, there are things that I am learning. And as I'm learning these things, I'm beginning to see more people ask me the same questions. That, well, how are you doing this? Then I'm able to explain. And it comes really very naturally because you are on that growth path as well. So I think that, and for me, like I said, I don't think that you would even be entrusted. I don't think God will entrust you with people that you can't help. So He would always bring people to you according to your own level of growth. So one has to know that this is a path and the learning is never ending. So you continue to learn, you crack a code today, you crack another one tomorrow, and you just continue to pour from what you are learning yourself. And so if anybody wants to help people, if you want to be a knowledge dispenser, it is okay for you to know that you have signed it for, signed in for a life of continuous learning.
Venture. Yeah.
Yes. So I want to ask you, what are those things that you have learned from working with people? There are times that learning is a two-way thing. People think that you are the one that is pouring, but there are times that somebody just comes with a perspective and it just throws you off balance, and you're like, whoa, I learned that as well.
Yeah.
So what are those things that just stand out for you? I know there will be a lot of them.
Okay, so there are a lot of them. So, but I think a good place to begin from will be from what I would consider my favorite crowd. My favorite crowd are the people who are in their 60s and above.
Okay.
I enjoy my sessions with them because they think they are coming to learn from me only, but in actual fact, it's a two-way street. Because when I see them and I sit with them, I do not miss the opportunity to glean knowledge from them. So one of the key things I've learned from them, and I first stumbled on this in a session before I ever stumbled on it in a book. Now, I had a couple, the man was 76 and his wife was, I think, 72. They came in for a session, this was in 2017. And the moment they sat down, they held hands. All through the session, they held hands. And I kept on wondering, what exactly are these guys doing? I said, you know what, do I ask or do I just wait and observe? So I decided to just wait and observe. And I watched them that day. I didn't ask them anything. They left. Then they came back. 3 sessions in, it dawned on me that the fact they were holding hands was almost like an unspoken agreement between them that whatever was going to happen in there, they had already conquered it, because that approach already meant that regardless of the fact that they would fight, they would bicker, they would be at each other in session, the moment they stood up, The way they will switch and ask me, so how about the kids? How about the family? You know, we hope you're okay. We hope you're taking care of yourself. They switch roles. They become parents again. So it's almost like they dump everything on me, and when they walk out that door, they're good. And this has been something I have been trying to teach couples for the longest.
Yeah.
So from that point, it dawned on me that the moment you can hold hands with a partner, even if you're not holding hands physically, but the fact that both of you, mentality that you're in on this together, there is something it does. It has a huge bearing on the direction of your therapy. That's one. The second thing I believe I have learned in, you know, speaking to people is that, and I will go with the lesser, let's say the lower age bracket now, the ones who fall between the 20 to, let's say your Gen Zs. The thing I have learned from them is that, you see, simple does it for them. The more technical your intervention process is, the more convoluted your intervention process is.
Yeah.
Just for them to grasp it. Simple does it for them. Sometimes it could be as simple as watching a video with them. It could be as simple as looking for a meme for them.
Yeah.
So with them, I learned that I don't have to put myself in a cast. I have to break out of a mold. I need to be fluid around them. So fluidity on one end, and two, a keen power of observation. You know, these are the things I have used in learning these two things.
Oh, okay. So I think for me, I've seen younger couples, and one of the things that I actually really admire about them is that they are a bit more vocal and emotionally aware. And
True.
I'm like, how I wish that year that we were this emotionally aware.
Yes.
Because they just, you know, you'll be talking to a young couple and they are saying, don't shut down. You are doing it again.
Yes.
You are distancing yourself emotionally now, and you are shutting down on me. And this is the same thing that I keep telling him all the time. He will just shut down in the middle of the conversation. And I'm like, it took training for me to know these things.
Yeah.
How do you just know it? You know, and for
It's
me,
their life every
they
day.
are vocal.
Oh man.
The way they are vocal and the way they, you know, they can just, you know, identify things that are emotional. For me, it's just mind blowing, and it just makes me also learn to be a bit more vocal about my emotions as well. So, in closing today, I wish we would not have to stop this. What are the things that you think that, how do we replenish? What are the advice? How can we replenish as, you know, knowledge dispensers?
Okay, there are a million and one things we can do as knowledge dispensers. But for me, the first thing that jumps out at me is we must have it in us to prioritize self-care routines. It's a must. Prioritize self-care routines.
Okay.
We must know how to prioritize ourselves without feeling guilty about it. Because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people, when it comes to taking care of themselves, it's almost like that becomes the last thing they do, especially for knowledge dispensers. Because of that mentality that they are here to fix and take care of other people, they put themselves on the list. So for me, I believe that prioritizing themselves is something that's very, very important. The second thing is that you need to get to a point where you understand that it's nothing to be ashamed of as a knowledge dispenser to also go seek for help when you feel that you've gotten to a point where you need someone else to help you navigate. There's no shame in it. Another thing I can put out there is, so as a knowledge dispenser, ensure that you have someone or a group of people with similar values, similar moral codes, that you can also always go to who know more than you do.
Yeah.
Because what that does is it keeps you in a constantly evolving state. Because the day you become the smartest person in the room, that's the day you start dying.
Yeah.
And like they will say,
Yeah.
if you become that smartest person, then change the room so that you can give yourself more room to grow. So for me, I think that by itself is absolutely important. The other thing is time management is crucial, I believe. Yeah, time management. A lot of
Yeah.
dispensers, Nika, they don't manage their time effectively. You can find out that one client comes in, sits with you. Maybe they're supposed to stay with you for an hour, and the next thing, 4 hours in, they're still there.
Yeah.
And somewhere at the back of your mind, as much as you want to tell them time is up, but deep down, you feel it might look somehow. Understand that, you see,
Yeah.
we live in a climate. Africa kills their prophets when given the opportunity. You're not in a
Yeah.
climate where people have the fondest respect
Yeah.
for people's time. So part of what your job entails as someone who takes care of other people by dispensing knowledge is that you must have a keen sense of timing. Another thing I can put out there is there's something else, and I think this is important. I'm trying to remember it. Oh, well, let me just put it this way. You should be able to self-reflect so that you know when you're going overboard, you know when you're oversharing, you know when self-reflection is key as a knowledge
Yeah.
dispenser. Because
Yeah.
self-reflection gives you the ability to do a lot of things, including reading a room, knowing who you're
Yeah.
with, who you're
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
say, what
Yeah.
not to say, when not to say. That level of
Yeah.
awareness is something
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
I think I can stop there.
Yes, sincerely, I think especially with the last point, I think I agree completely. I think I see a lot of people in the bid to make themselves ordinary
Yeah,
and not to look like semi-gods or demigods. They overshare.
yeah,
Just you want to encourage a couple that okay, I also have issues with my own marriage as well, and it is okay for you to, and they share and share and overshare until they begin to lose respect,
of course.
and it takes a level of respect for people to take you seriously. So there is definitely a need to
Yeah,
be aware of what to share and what not to share. So at this point, thank you very much. At this point, I don't know if anybody has a question because we need to run now. If you have a question, you want to join or something before we round off today, let me see. Do we have anybody that is requesting to join the conversation? I'm not seeing anything here. I'm not saying anything. And in that case, I really want to. I don't know what your last words will be for us, your closing words for us today, so
okay.
that.
Well, Nika, thank you again once more for the opportunity, and thank you everyone who made out time to join tonight just to have this little conversation. My parting words will be this: for everyone who is a knowledge dispenser, who
Yeah,
has anybody looking up to them to
yeah,
learn something. I need you to understand that what you're doing is not the ordinary. It's not
yeah,
what most
yeah,
people
yeah,
opt for. And that job requires that you're job proud about it, for starters. That's the first thing. You should be
yeah,
proud of yourself because not everybody decides to be on that mountain. There are 7
yeah,
mountains of influence, but you decided to be on the one that regenerates and trains leaders across other mountains. It's laudable.
yeah,
And the second thing is this: while you're doing it, your money story may not be everything you want it to be, especially at the onset. Do not allow it
Yeah.
become a reason why you lose passion for what you know is your life's work. Because even if you went ahead to do something else, all in a bid to make money, at some point, the sense of unfulfillment will still set in. Trust me, it is something I may have experienced at the earlier stages. But I'm glad that somebody spoke to me, somebody encouraged me, and I'm doing that for someone today. Even if your money is not adding up and you're there every day giving of yourself, I can guarantee that at some point, as long as you're able to sit down, strategize properly, niche down, know what you're trying to concentrate on, and go for it.
Yeah.
Before you know it, it will open up. And that's the last thing I
Yeah.
want to say.
Thank you very much. God bless you so much for
Thank you.
being intimately honest with us today. Thank you for sharing of yourself. Thank you for honoring our invitation. If we
Anytime.
are supposed to pay for this period, I know how much we're supposed to pay.
Please don't mention. Don't mention.
So, but we really appreciate you giving us this time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your honesty. God bless you and
You're
continue to
welcome.
expand what you do. And just
Yeah.
like he has said, if you want to be in this field, sincerely, it is not going to be about the money first. God will make things work for you, but your passion has to be there. You have to
Mhm.
really want to be here for, and things will just take shape. You will not even be just like the good book says. You will not see wind and you will not see rain, but the valleys will just be filled somehow. So,
Yeah.
and as many of us that just are in that place, just know that we are all going through the same things, and that is why I just needed somebody to come and tell us these things so that we are aware that you're not going through these things alone, and you don't have to suffer in silence. You can speak to someone and just lighten the burden generally. Thank you very much once again. God bless you. I appreciate you big time for being here. And
Thank
to
you.
everybody on the other side, thank you very much for being here this evening. Until I see you next week. Next time, not next week. Bye bye.